Hello. Tonight, we will be talking with Paul Lehmann, who is the Green Party candidate running for Missouri Secretary of State. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us tonight, and thank you very much for standing up and running for office. We appreciate that very much. Got a number of questions here for you tonight, just to introduce you to the people of Missouri, and so they get to know you better. I'm just going to jump right in, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, start off with just some personal background questions. What got you interested in politics, and why did you decide to join the Green Party and run as a Green Party candidate?
I first want to say thank you for doing this video, and greetings to everyone who is watching this video. So I come from a background of I'm an organic farmer, and I've been into organic living all my life, all my adult life, that is, and have turned my back on the chemical agriculture as such. And that includes gardening, that practice organic practices in my gardening. I have two adult children who both live in Chicago, and we have some interesting conversations because I'm much more progressive than they are. I'm more assertive, I should say, than they are, and so we have some interesting dialogue. To get to that first question, I've always been interested in politics. I can remember sitting in front of the TV with my dad when I was, sixth grade, and we were watching the race for the presidency of Richard Nixon and John Kennedy. So that was my first memory of expressing interest in politics. And so I've been involved throughout my life. My career was a minister, and of course you had to be careful about politics and religion, but I always tried to sneak it in wherever I could in preaching and in dealing with people and trying to promote justice and candidates that stand for justice. So I joined the Green Party because this was in 2016 when when Bernie Sanders had dropped out of the race, and Jill Stein came into being, and I liked what she said, and the Green Party is just almost identical to my belief system. And I had high hopes in Bernie Sanders, but I felt like he betrayed his followers, and so many followed him out of the party. I've never been a party person until I joined the Green Party, but so that's how I got involved, and I was the coordinator in Columbia, Missouri, for Jill Stein. And I like to think that the number of votes that we got in Boone County, especially, was partially attributable to my efforts and as a leader, and setting up a video ad campaign and to reach out to the younger voters who use that media. So that was a little bit of my background.
Super. Well, just kind of following up on that in a related vein, what experiences in your life have best prepared you to succeed in the office that you are running for? You're running for Missouri Secretary of State. So what has set you up to be a successful Secretary of State in Missouri?
It's my sense of advocating for justice, for freedom, for release from silly rules that we impose, and when it comes to the Secretary of State, we're in a hot debate over how to conduct the vote in November, and the Secretary of State is the person who has oversight of the elections. Of course, they have to do what the legislature and the governor tell them, but the Secretary of State has a lot of influence on what's to be done. So if they say well, this would work well, then usually the legislature will go along with that. And so this is a very critical time in the race for the Secretary of State, because I offer a dramatically different viewpoint of the elections than is being promoted by both the Republican and Democrat parties. So what prepared me for this is just a life of hard knocks. In the church, I've always been an advocate for human rights. I was an early supporter of equal rights for women in the church. The church was a little slow to get involved there. And gay rights. I was on the cutting edge of that in the church, and probably lost some of the zeal of the parishioners because I took such stands, and I preached and justified that through biblical foundation of these various justice issues. And so that's prepared me for this run, that I have a very strong foundation in searching for or advocating for just issues.
Well, I certainly believe that. So you may have already kind of started to talk about this, but if you had to pick one subject that is your most important focus of your campaign, what is it? Why is it so important? And what is your unique approach to addressing this subject once you're in office?
This number 3 is the heart of my presentation tonight. It has to do, as I indicated, with the elections and voting rights and what is most helpful. So I'd just like to, if I may, tell the story of how we got to where we are today. In 1789, in the Constitution, there's no mention of voting, and they just turned that over to the states, and the states decided to design their voting patterns, and so you have a variety of those throughout the country as a result of that. And this is an interesting piece of information that in the 1790s, only 6% of the citizens of the country were allowed to vote. And so over the years, over the 230 years since then, we have expanded that. First of all, it was only white males, landowners, that is, and then they extended to white males who were allowed, and you know the history. Eventually, black males were allowed to vote, and then women were late in the process were allowed to vote. And so over the years, it's been expanded, and in most recent years, it's been a debate over how do we suppress the vote to favor one party over the other. So I have a plan or a proposal to make that final step. We're just almost there to make the voting rights a truly democratic process, and that's my goal, is to make this a true democracy. So if what I would propose is that on your 18th birthday, all citizens would be enrolled automatically, would be registered to vote. And that would be a lifetime registration. There's no deadlines, none of this other stuff that we have to go through and trying to figure out, well, when is this deadline? And oh, I missed that deadline and this, so forth. So the only deadline in my plan is election day. So you've got to vote by then. So that's the only deadline. Then to carry that out, there's be no questions asked. The only requirement for voting is that you are a citizen of the United States. And that could be done through birth or through a through naturalization. So citizen is citizen. So there should be no restrictions. And in fact, it should be promoted as not only a right, it's not a privilege, it's a right and an obligation for people to participate in a democracy. And if you put restrictions on people doing that, then we are selling ourselves short, and we are denying people a right to vote. For example, now in the coronavirus pandemic situation, the governor thought he was going to help things by allowing people to vote by mail. Well, we've always voted by mail. It's by absentee ballot. And so he really doesn't change anything. And then he puts all these restrictions on voting by mail. You've got to have a certified signature. You've got to, and you have to have the ballot in. You have to have it mailed at a certain time, and it has to arrive in the office and on election day. And all of these are uncontrollable things. A person who's voting has no control over the mail service. So if you mail your ballot in the day before and it doesn't arrive on the day, when it always takes one day to travel around my county. You don't have to go more than that. And but in my plan, the ballots have to be postmarked on election day, by election day. And so some will kind of filter in after election day. And then, and so you will pretty well have a count on election night, but then there are still some votes that will come in, like absentee votes do now. So that's, and then there would be provisions for the handicapped, because there are some people, I've learned that blind people can vote electronically, but they can't read a paper ballot. Someone would have to read that to them, and we don't, if they're independent, we don't need to bring someone else into their voting booth, so to speak. So so there would be special privileges, as we have now with shut-ins and handicapped, to vote. So then, so those adjustments would be made. So so each election, there would be plenty of time. A ballot would be mailed out. A secure ballot would be mailed out to every citizen in that county, and they know who we are. The government has us on a list, and we can't escape the government. So there's no reason to think that someone's going to fall through the cracks, because we're there. So so each citizen gets a ballot, and they can decide whether they want to vote or whether they don't want to vote. So all they have to do is vote in their wishes and mail that back in, or there would be drop boxes around. There could be drop boxes at the post office, for example, that people could drop their ballots in, and then those would be picked up at election day. So these are some of the ideas, and a model for this would be the 5 states out west. What are they? Hawaii and Colorado and Washington and Oregon and Utah. Utah, a conservative state, does mail-in ballots. So, and they report no fraud in those states, because they've got it done in a secure fashion. So that's pretty much the summary of what I would do as Secretary of State, would be to pressure and advocate for this universal voting for all citizens in our country.
That sounds like a great plan.
It's a plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
It sounds like a big advancement to what we're looking at now.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of shift gears here a little bit and and ask you about what your analysis of the global climate crisis is, and what do you think the best way forward to address this emergency would be?
Well, we have on the table the Green New Deal, and that should have been implemented, 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and sooner. I do have some issues with that because it's kind of a duplication of what we're trying to get rid of, and that is a corporate control or mass control of our energy production. So in my way of modifying the Green New Deal is that everything must be localized. And so that back in the old days, every farm had a windmill on their place. And that's how they pumped their water. And then there were silos. Every farm had a silo. So what's wrong with every household having solar panels and a wind generator? To have both, because that you have more universal coverage and be less need for battery storage. So that's the route we need to go. So the grid would be a massive grid. I mean, it would cover the entire country rather than being located out in Kansas or Arizona, where they set up these solar panels. Right here in Missouri, for example, we have plenty of sun, we have plenty of wind, and we can do this thing. And I've had debates with the local electric cooperatives over this. What they want to do is they want to implement the centralized energy production. So you have these massive wind turbines, massive arrays of solar panels, and then they say, oh, we can't produce enough electricity. Well, they can't, but they could if they would spread the grid out among all of their customers. So that's the way I would address the climate. And also the president or people should be advocating a more simplified lifestyle so that we don't have such consumer problems. And so if we produce less things, then that uses less energy, and we need to localize all of our production. This is food. There's even a move now from the people who have been against anything that climate change issues. They are now saying, oh, the hog factories are. They had to shut down, and so we had a shortage of meat in the markets. And so they're saying, well, we should open up those plants that we used to have in every community to produce the meat on a local level. So the same with crops, and the whole business is that should be localized, and people should be encouraged to go back to the land, break up these massive big farms, and break them up into plots where people can afford to buy and produce food for the local economy. So that's part of that global crisis thing, is to reduce our production actions that we do.
I really like all of those ideas a lot. So thank you very much for advocating for that. Kind of along a similar vein, our current growth-based capitalist economy not only threatens a habitable planet like you were talking about, but it has failed to provide our communities with sufficient access to resources in areas such as healthcare, education, housing, and other necessities of life. Give us your analysis of this economic system and how an eco-socialist Green Party alternative would function differently to address these and other shortcomings.
Yeah, I embrace the Green Party stance on the, as it says here, the eco-socialist plan. That part of that, as I already said, is we need to develop a system of a more simplified living, and to try to convince people that they can have a very rich, rewarding life, and they don't have to have all this stuff. And we've been seduced into thinking that that you're not a success in your life if you don't have all this stuff. So that would be part of that. And as far as the capitalist system, the capitalist system leaves out a whole bunch of people. So if you can't keep up, if you can't be competitive, and this is at all levels, people lose out at very high levels of competition because somebody's got it. It's a winner loser system, and whereas the socialist socialist system spreads that around and makes everybody winners, so that we have a safety net for the poor, and a way for them to be involved in being a part of the community. But as it stands, this capitalist system is in everything. Like in the police system, that's a capitalist enterprise, and so the recent protests and demonstrations are about trying to restrain the budgets on police and spreading that out to people who in a non-violent way will solve problems that arise in the community. And then coupled with that, you've got to feed people. You've got to enable them to feed themselves and their children. What is the level of poverty in the world, in the country? Children are, it's just almost half of them. It seems, I shouldn't say the exact amount, but I know in my local school system, half of the students are on a reduced lunch or free lunch program. So the poverty is right here in my backyard, and it's because of the capitalist system that pushes these people down, doesn't give them a living wage or an adequate wage, and if they if they had a criminal record, then they discriminate against them, and even though they've served their time, just lots of ways that we lock out people. The handicapped is another example, how we lock out people who have a lot to offer to society, but the capitalist system says you are a loser, so therefore you do not get to participate. And so that's kind of a general way. And I might mention that as far as education is concerned, that is really it's structured as a socialist system because we all pay taxes, and that's all pooled together, and then that's used to run the school system. So that's a pretty democratic way to operate the school system. But then the school system turns around and starts doing things like using taxpayer money I'm speaking of Nancy DeVos, the Secretary of the Education, and try to promote charter schools and private schools and try to siphon off this public money for these private institutions. And what that does is that instead of building up the public education, we starve the education by underfunding, and then they say, oh well, we've got to give this money to some private for-profit or some private enterprise, and then they use public money for capitalist based system. So that's an example that I have for we do have some socialist tendencies, but then they are always undermined by this capitalist drive of we got to leave some people out. We can't include everybody. So
yeah, that I hear you. I appreciate your analysis on that. I really do. So you're running in a kind of a what's currently a hostile kind of corporate chokehold on our government, and how do you plan on being successful in this environment and expand people's direct democratic power? If you're elected, how can you expand democracy? away from the current chokehold, the corporate chokehold?
One of the things I've learned, I don't know all of the things that the Secretary of State, a lot of those are just perfunctory. And so one of those things is that they are supposed to review incorporation and well, they're the rubber stamp on people, groups that want to incorporate. And as Secretary of State, I would try to infuse in all of that, those regulations, a sense of green attributes. So if a corporation wants to applies for to be Secretary of State, then I would slip in a requirement that they have to operate in green buildings in their production, and they need to adopt green practices. So I would use that authority to its greatest length to try to infuse what we call the Green Party values into society. And that's the only way we can stand up to the corporate, well, not the only way, but that's one way to stand up to the corporate powers and of course, another way is to enforce the law. There's a lot of corporate law, and currently the people are allowed to get away with things that they shouldn't be, and so not to impose a whole lot of rules and regulations, but to always keep in mind, is this going to be helpful to society for every rule and regulation that we have.
So Paul Lehmann's not the rubber stamp. I like the sound of that. You're actually going to look it over and make sure that it's for the public good. That sounds real good. Well, kind of along the same line, in our current political environment, unfortunately, the majority of eligible voters are disengaged and really no longer believe that electoral politics offers solutions to the challenges we face. How does your campaign and the Green Party in general overcome this cynicism and pessimism to build a movement that can bring the real change that we need?
Yeah, I think it all has to do with atmosphere. So one thing, as I've already said, you eliminate all the obstacles. So you might get somebody who's interested in voting, and then they go in and to register, and they are told, "Oh, you're too late. You can't register. So let's get rid of all of that." And so they get discouraged. And of course, they're discouraged because the two major parties continue to nominate and elect people who don't really represent the masses in society, and who get entrenched in their offices and really don't serve the people as they should. So to develop interest, that's very hard to do. But I think all we can do is to eliminate the obstacles first, and then always have a campaign of saying, you are a citizen of the United States. In this case, I'm also inclusive of non-citizens, but when it comes to voting, you are citizens, and you have a right to vote, and you have an obligation to vote, because if you want change, or if you want to advocate for change, you have to vote. Now, that's said often, but not enough, and it has to come from the elected officials who promote that, and so the government needs to be putting out notices and ads and pushing voting. This is your right. You need to be voting, and that would go a long way to help.
I think it would go a long way to have a Missouri Secretary of State that actually is out there advocating for voting and trying to expand the franchise.
That's right. Yeah, you got to vote for Paul Lehmann on the Green Party ticket.
Right.
Not in the primary. Don't worry about the primary, but stay in the other candidates, but when they get narrowed down, then remember me in November.
So, I think people hearing this, hear you talk about your platform and what you plan to do are going to want to know how they can help out. And so where would you send people to find out more about your candidacy and perhaps donate or help out what you're doing?
I'm running a low budget campaign. I get offers from various organizations around the state because I am a candidate to be on candidate forums, and I've submitted information to some of them. But there's one down at the Lake of the Ozarks, a radio station that is having one. I think was it tomorrow? Yeah, they're supposed to have a candidate forum tomorrow, and so when I called them about it, then they're not practicing social distancing. Nobody's wearing masks there, so I'm not about to go down there and be a part of that. But they intend to have another round when the candidates are winnowed out, and so I will try to participate in that way. And I'm trying to encourage them to do a Zoom or a telephone interview for a radio station, for heaven's sake. They are not doing telephone interviews. That doesn't make sense to me, but be that as it may. But that would be a good audience to get on to is that station. So I hope I can do that in the fall. And so if anyone is interested, should I give my my phone number? Would that be
whatever you're comfortable with?
Yeah.
I know that we've got information on mogreens.org.
Okay.
Mogreens with an S.org. There's we'll have videos. We have videos and bios and things like that.
Right.
But any additional, any information that you'd want to share, you're welcome to. But your information's on there for sure.
Yeah, I would suggest that they go to the Green Party website and find me there. I might just rattle off my telephone number if for those who can want to write it down. It's 660-248-1134. 660-248-1134. And I live at Fayette, Missouri. I'm south of Fayette on a small farm, and would love to hear from anyone who has questions and would like to. I don't need, at this point, I don't need the financial support, but I wouldn't turn it down if someone wanted to help out in some way.
Yeah, well, I think that shows. I mean, that's the Green Party. I think that you, like all the Green Party folks, and I've been interviewing a few, are real folks that really care about the community, and they're not doing it to get rich. They're not doing it to get famous. Just like you're doing it to do your civic duty and to help your neighbors, your community. And I, for one, am inspired by you and appreciate you, and I encourage everyone to look you up and help you out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for talking with me tonight. We'll get the word out and encourage everyone to join in. Thanks so much, Paul.
Yeah, and thank you, and wish everyone well that sees this video.